Hi Year 11, hope you're okay. At this very late hour, I have figured out how to screen record on the iPad and use the Apple Pencil. So I'm hoping it will work. It's been a bit buggy, but I'm going to do a walkthrough of the 2020 Paper 2. Just bear in mind the equipment you can use. The time will be lower because you answer less questions. So just remember, on these walkthroughs, I am not going through all of the content. I'm giving my interpretation of how I would answer the questions. And the important thing for you to note here is how it looks, how the questions are laid out, but also as well how I would pick these questions apart. So here we go, let's make a start. Which statement completes the following sentence? A megacity is a city with at least 10 million people. Just bear in mind with this how you change and answer these if you need to. So again, take it slow. Next question. One you can miss. Very easy to miss. All you've got to do is complete figure 1 using the data down here. Something else students will miss with this is the key. Be sure to use the key. Be sure to use a pencil. Be sure to use a ruler. Be precise. And 1-3 down here, calculate the mean percentage for 2050. Answer to the nearest whole. Remember, you will get a calculator, so just make sure you use it and take your time. Here, you have got 3 easy marks that can be attained. So again, just take your time. Give 2 pull factors that encourage people to move to an urban area in an LIC or a ME. For questions like this, even though they're quite low, try and be as specific as you can. Yeah, you could just say employment, but employment is a reason in both LIC and NEES, but also in HICS. So can you be even more specific? Something as simple as just putting more diverse employment. Is that a little bit more specific? Can just help you out. You could also have medical care, for example. So here we have now got in 1-5 our first sort of extended writing question. Suggest why sanitation systems in LICs and NEES create challenges. Use figure 2 and your own understanding. So, it is a suggest, which is a hidden explain. And you're going to have at least in here some AO2. You've got to show some understanding. It's 4 marks, so it's going to be EC times 2. And we're thinking that sanitation is basically cleanliness. So why is it difficult in poorer countries to keep areas clean? We can see from this image, you've got areas that are showing quite a low level of development. You've got a shared toilet here, which can cause problems with disease, problems with a low quality of life. And we're thinking about these LICs and these, they are at times quite poor. They can't afford to improve these areas that we can see in figure 2. So again, just bear that in mind. 2EC, you must refer to the figure and what you see. The pencil's still working, which is great. So here we have got a graph using pictures. It's like a pictograph, and each arrow represents 10% of the waste recycled. So this, obviously, here would probably be 5%. And all you've got to do is basically fill in the data for Hull. Okay, and it is 50%. Now what you want to do is just make sure that you draw your arrows as close as you can. I'm doing a terrible job here, to what you actually see in the, there we go, to what you actually see in the picture, and that there would get you the mark, nice and straightforward. Outline here is basically just a short explain. So literally just EC, just evidence comment. What is one advantage of recycling waste? Just evidence comment, lowers pollution, it's good for the environment, it means you can use less natural resources. It's quite straightforward. Now here we have come to our first high tariff question. Let's have a bit of a look at this. So we have got assess the importance of managing transport as part of urban sustainability. So urban sustainability is that idea of creating urban areas which are kind to the pencil's going, kind to the environment, but also good for people. And when we're thinking about transport, we're thinking about the kind of transport that we find in cities. So for example, trams, my handwriting with a pencil, buses, we're thinking about potentially trains, we're thinking about Sheffield. And in this question, the assess, in a way, is a really in-depth explain. So basically, explain the importance of why these are important for this. So for example, trams are a really important way of managing transport, as it reduces the amount of traffic on the road, lowering the amount of pollution in the city, which improves its environmental friendliness. Buses do the same thing. All you're doing with this is just showing an understanding of how transport is important for being kind to the environment and kind to people. Now, the difficulty with this question, and assess, can sometimes mean a good and a bad. So what's important is that you read the whole question and you figure out what it is asking for. With regards to its EC, it is 6 marks, so it wants ECS times 2, and then maybe a little bit of a conclusion. Nothing much, a sentence or so. When I saw this question, it made me think. I had to stop and think about this question. So don't worry if they do make you a little bit confused to begin with. Pull the question apart and hopefully you'll begin to see a way through it. Like I say, I had to think about this one a little bit. Okay, so here we have a OS map showing part of Hull. And all you've got to do is find the 6-figure grid reference for the area marked X, which is here. We can see, if we go along the corridor first, that the area X is in 09. So that means we have only got a choice of these two here. And if we go up the stairs, we can see that the area is in 28. Well, if I have a little look here, 09, 28, the answer can only be that one. So read the question carefully, take your time with it, and often it will just reveal itself. With this one, we didn't even have to do these two numbers. We didn't even have to bother with them. The answer figured itself out. Here we've got what is the straight line distance to the nearest 100 metres, which people will miss, from point X to the centre of the rail and bus station at 092288. Now I'm not going to go into detail about this one because I don't want to spend too much time going through this. You need to revise it if you're not sure. But what you would do is you would find the rail and bus station, and then basically you would draw on a line point from it to point X, and then using the scale you would figure out the distances. So again, I'm not going to spend too much time on that one, but I'll push forward. Okay, your first 9 marker. First thing you do, don't be overawed. Don't be nervous. Just look at the question, begin to pick it apart. We've got 2 figures. We've got an area showing before and an area showing after. And we can clearly see that this area has been regenerated. There is more business space, there are people there, the area is clearly making money now. A suggest is a hidden explain, and it wants to know how a regeneration can solve urban problems. You should use the figures and a UK example you have studied. Now, you are met with this question, you need to think about what you know. Well, the UK example you've studied is Sheffield, specifically Park Hill. So you should refer to that somewhere in your answer where you can. What you should then do is think about, well, what are urban problems? They can vary. These urban problems can be dereliction, they can be homelessness, they can be unemployment. So get an idea of what these urban problems are, and then think about how this and this help to solve this, whilst getting Park Hill in where you can. Now, it is a 9 marker, so it is ECS times 3, and you need some sort of conclusion as well. And it is spag marks, so keep an eye on your capital letters and use technical language where you can. Now, the difficulty with this question is its breadth. You can answer it in lots of different ways. It doesn't really want your opinion as such, it just wants you to explain. So you're going to need 3 paragraphs here. So for example, you could have paragraph 1 focusing on dereliction, paragraph 2 focusing on unemployment, paragraph 3 focusing on potentially homelessness. And what you should try and do is use the figures and Park Hill wherever you can. Now, when it says to use Park Hill, you don't have to go into huge amounts of detail with this. You just have to show that you know. So you could mention how they, for example, you can see in the figures they've improved business space. For example, they did the same in Park Hill, where they left the lower floors for lots of digital businesses. So you've just got to show that you know. So yeah, hopefully that's sort of helped you out a little bit there. Now, this section will be in your exams. They will leave it in. When you see economic world, you avoid it. You go nowhere near it. You literally turn the pages and you move on. The economic world section will still be in the exam paper because some schools have studied it. We haven't, so avoid it. Now you must answer these. You have to do section C. So you do question 3, and then you do either 4, 5 or 6. But we, as a school, specialise in water. So you only do the water questions. So effectively, in section C, you will do question 3 and question 5. Just bear in mind though, these questions might be in a different order on your exam paper. So question 6 might be food, so just bear that in mind. So study figure 9, a graph showing the percentage of income spent on food in selected countries. Obviously we would see it, but copyright has got us here. Use figure 9, suggest, which is just explain how percentage of income spent on food may influence well-being. If it is giving you a figure, refer directly to that figure. Use the figure, quote it in your answer. Give numbers if it is asking. Okay, it is 2 marks, so literally just evidence comment. Just how can the amount of income spent on food influence well-being? Basically, if we were to reword that, why does spending more money on food impact your well-being? Organic farming, again, 1 mark, farming without the use of chemicals. And what we can see here in 3.3 is an interesting one, a 3 marker. Okay, you don't often see these. So basically just explain why there is a growing demand in the UK for food from LICs. Now again, this question could be reworded in a really simple way. Why is the UK buying more food from poor countries? Now this here is reworded into a much simpler way, but the examiners deliberately give you questions that are a little bit unclear. This is a 3 marker, so you could have ECS, you could have ECE, so you make a separate point. You could talk about how it is cheaper from LICs because they have lower standards, lower minimum wage laws, more exotic foods as our climate isn't appropriate for that. There's lots you could talk about here, really. So yeah, just a bit of revision will carry you through here. Okay, so we've got some figures here, 10A and 10B. Here we can see the cost of producing energy, and we can see a protest down here on 10B for a wind turbine. We can see here that coal and gas are quite expensive when using to produce energy. You have got here a statement right here. You should use that in your answer, so quote from it if necessary. And all it wants you to do is explain the statement using 10A and 10B. That's it. Now, it wants to know about the economic and the environmental issues with the exploitation of energy resources. Okay, so this is important. Okay, it doesn't want to know about the use. It wants to know about the process of getting it. Okay. Now, we all know if we burn coal, we get pollution. We burn gas, we get pollution, we get greenhouse gases. But what this question is asking about is not the burning of it. It wants to know about getting it in the first place. So coal, gas, you got to dig it up. It damages the environment in that very process. As you can see from the figure, it's very expensive to use. It is 6 marks, so it is ECS times 2. So this splits itself quite nicely into 2 paragraphs here. Now it isn't explain, so you don't need a conclusion really. You've just got to show basically how these 2 things show economic and environmental issues. That's it. There we go. Now, we arrive at the food question. Don't do this. Move on. And here we are at the water question. This one we do. So we can see here that we've got a map with several countries that have not been shaded in, but it shows us the water footprint of these countries in Africa. Basically the amount of water they use per person per year. Countries like Libya, Mali, Botswana, they're using a lot of water per person, whereas countries such as the DRC don't use much. Firstly, again, complete the graph, or complete the figure 13. So you've got to complete the data for Niger and for the Central African Republic. So you've got to look at the data, look at the key, and figure it out. Niger is here, the Central African Republic is there. Make sure you use the key, okay, to get your patterns correct. This is 2 easy peasy marks, so just bear this in mind. Okay, next, describe the distribution of countries with this footprint. So you want to look at your map. We are looking at this level here. So we're looking for that line. And you could say, for example, the majority of these countries are focused in the centre of the African continent. For example, the Democratic Republic of Congo. So it's just about giving, with this one, you want to give a trend. So where do you see it mostly? And then give me an example. That's it. So show me that you know where it is. If there was another country, maybe up here somewhere, you might mention that as well. But there isn't in this case, so we wouldn't. Okay, next question. Outline one way in which economic development leads to increased water consumption. Remember, outline is just an explain, so it's just EC. Just give me an explanation as to how economic development, so basically making more money, how can that lead to increased water consumption? Well, for example, if people are making more money, they can have things like more appliances that use water. Okay, they might, if a country is developing, they might have more factories and they use water. Okay, so think, just bear your revision in mind and just consider why a country making more money might lead to it using more water. Water deficit is basically just when supply is less than demand. So the area is in deficit because it can't meet its demand. And to finish off, we have got two pictures. One we can't see, but it's a grey water system. Now remember, a grey water system is basically non-dirty but not drinkable water. So things like shower water, bath water, being used in things like your toilet and being used for gardening and for like watering flowers. And a water butt, so basically this thing here. Okay, so these two things, how can those things make water more sustainable? Now, quite a straightforward question. Again, it is a suggest, which is effectively just an explain. We are at least looking at AO2 here. We need to show some understanding. 6 marks, so ECS times 2. And all we're really thinking about here is that sort of grey water reduces supply, reduces demand, because it can be used for things like toilets, which are like intensive use appliances. Toilets use a lot of water. And we can also say that water butts do the same. Okay, they reduce demand. And you can say that, you could mention that they are especially effective in summer when people are watering their gardens. It's a suggest, so you don't really need a conclusion, but you could maybe bob one in that refers to the question. Now just remember, this stretch should try and link to the wording of the question here for that hook back, okay, to the question. You want to really hook back where you can, because what it does is it keeps your answer targeted. So yeah, not too bad. Now, you've reached the end of your paper. You do not do this. So when you reach the end of your paper, what you then want to do is go back through and start to check your low tariffs. So start to look at your small mark questions, because these small mark questions are the ones where you rush and will likely miss. Remember, we don't do these because these are economic world. But for example, something like this could be quite easy to get wrong if you've rushed this. So slow down. Once you have checked your small markers, have a look at your high tariff questions and ask yourself the question, have you hooked back to these key underlined words? So has your stretch referred to an urban problem? And check that in your structure. Okay? Right. That was the walkthrough of June 2020's paper 2. The pen has worked mostly. Look at that, even the rubber's working. The pen has worked mostly. There we go. So I was Mr. Robson. I hope that this was helpful for you, and I will start to do a paper 1 soon. Thank you very much, everybody, and I hope this was useful.